everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So today we're going to do a couple more stories out of Dark Carnival by Ray Bradbury. We've already talked about this book quite a bit. Of course, I highly recommend it. You should pick it up. I'm going to talk about two stories today. The first one is called The Maiden, and I cannot find any publication information about this story. I believe that the first time this story appeared was in Dark Carnival. It hasn't been republished much at all. I did find that someone had made some kind of a compilation of kind of warped stories about love, but it wasn't all Ray Bradbury. The Maiden was the story from Ray Bradbury that was included in this compilation. But as far as I could tell, that was the only time the story had ever been republished. So I believe Dark Carnival is the place to get this story. It's incredibly short. It's literally a page and a half. Like it's a microfiction or a flash fiction, whatever you want to call it. It's short. It's a very interesting story. I'm gonna spoil it. I'm also going to spoil the other story, the Tombstone, that I read. So, spoilers, just so you know. So this story is about a guy who's really in love with this maiden. And it turns out very quickly, because it's a short story, it turns out that it's probably a guillotine, I'm assuming, that he's in love with. And in the end, he lets the guillotine chop his head off. Which is very bizarre. And it is very sexual and disturbing. It is a very bizarre story. And we've talked about in the past other stories in Dark Carnival about maybe some of the writings of Michael Gyra from The Swans. We've talked a little bit about Harlan Ellison and kind of his infatuation with really shocking, disturbing things. So it's weird because I don't enjoy that kind of fiction. I don't like shock value stuff, but I really love that it's Ray Bradbury and that it's so old. Of course, Dark Carnival, I believe, was published in 1947. So this is coming from 1947. And I don't imagine that he's the first to ever write disturbing stuff or anything like that. I just don't associate it with Ray Bradbury. You know, it's not something that he kept through his writing career. So I kind of appreciate seeing it. I kind of picture him, and none of this is true. This is purely me making this up, but it's kind of funny to me. I picture him like sitting in a malt shop, right, in like 1946, and he's got his sleeves rolled up, and he's got his notebook, and he's writing, and he's just really hoping that one of the girls sitting up at the counter will come over and ask him what he's writing, right? And then he wants to show him the Maiden so that they can see how deep and dark he is. I really appreciate his angry young man side. It's kind of cool to see that. So yeah, and that's all it is. You know, in the end, he talks about the orgasm of blood shooting out of his neck, and it's crazy. It's a crazy, weird little story, and definitely worth reading, especially if you are into that kind of stuff, because it's a very early example, I think. I'm no expert at that genre of writing, but I believe this is kind of early and interesting and weird. So that's it for that, because it's so short. And that's why I also read the Tombstone. So now let's talk a little bit about the Tombstone. It was first published in March of 1945 in Weird Tales magazine, and it is the story of a woman who is clearly in a really bad relationship and really does not like her man very much. So they've been traveling for like 4 days. They arrive in a town, they rent a room, and when they walk in the door, there's a tombstone sitting in the room. And the owner of the establishment tries to explain that the person who lived there before was carving on the tombstone but misspelled the name on the tombstone. So he flipped out and he left and he went to work at an envelope factory, and he just left the tombstone there. So the landlord is saying, I'll get it out of here tomorrow, but for tonight you'll have to sleep with the tombstone in the room. So the woman seizes upon this opportunity as a way to punish her man all night by pretending that she's terrified that there's a tombstone in the room and that she knows that the ghost is going to come and haunt them, and she can keep her man up all night, and it's a fun game for her. So she goes and cuts flowers and puts them around the grave while he's trying to sleep, and she prays and murmurs, and then finally she gets up and gets ready to go to bed. But then she hears the people downstairs, and she pretends that it must be the guy in the grave and that he's waking up, and she's acting all scared and everything. But then the owner of the tombstone shows up. He comes back to the apartment. He knocks on the door. They let him in, and he says, "I'm thrilled to say that I found a person whose name is spelled this way," because he was carving white into the tombstone. So White, but it was supposed to be Whyte. But he just found someone named White that passed away like an hour ago. So he's super excited because now he can use the tombstone. So he has a couple people come in, they lug the tombstone away, and he says, "Thanks so much," and he leaves. So then she feels depressed because her fun has been kind of spoiled, and they lay back down in bed. But as they're laying there, they hear a knock on the door downstairs below them. The couple that they heard earlier when she was saying, "It's him, he's rising from the grave," they hear a knock on that couple's door. And then they hear a woman come to the door, and they hear the guy that came and collected the tombstone say, "Here is your tombstone for your husband who passed away about an hour ago." So it's kind of a ghost story in a weird way. I feel like it's more a story of a woman playing some stupid game that has more ramifications than she's aware of. She ends up killing the man downstairs, I guess, by playing her stupid games. They call her stupid 3 or 4 times throughout the story. I did not enjoy this story very much. I know that we're in a different world now, and I've talked about this before, that divorce really wasn't a thing. You just couldn't do it back in the day. And I'm so thankful that today we can, right? Because clearly these two have created a hell for each other. And they just punish each other over and over and over again. And I don't meet many couples like that today, thankfully. I feel like we live in a world where somebody could be mature enough and allowed. I want to make it very clear that it wasn't just that people didn't like divorce. They literally couldn't do it, right? It could be illegal in some states because of religion or some nonsense, right? Now we live in a world where if people complain about their significant other a ton, you can just say, "Break up." Dude, stop. Get out. You're wasting your time. And I don't mean to be harsh about it or anything weird like that. I'm just thankful that we don't have to be in a world where people are stuck together, where there's arranged marriages and people hate each other and they're forced to live with each other for their entire lives, you know. At least where I'm from, that's really not a thing. You don't have to do that. And I'm very glad about that, because the constant bickering, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Divorce is good. I'm just going to say that. So, I feel like this story was kind of unfairly slanted towards the woman being the bad guy, because it's kind of from her point of view, so we can see all the games she's playing and how evil she's being and how much she's enjoying it, and how bad he is for taking away her fun by trying to get sleep. And it's weird. It's a weird little story. Didn't love it. I kind of did like the guillotine story, you know, even though it was such a weird concept, but this one I didn't enjoy so much. But those are the two stories that I read this week. Pretty good, pretty good. I am enjoying Dark Carnival. I gotta say that. I really am enjoying it. I would strongly recommend that you pick it up, of course. It's really great. If you liked this, please hit the like button. If you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe because we have so much of it. And have a great day.